Hello and welcome back to Building Momentum, the show where we peel back the curtain on the exciting and often chaotic world of building a successful SaaS business. I'm Yash, your host for this show, where every episode we bring you the stories and strategies of founders who've been in the trenches, conquering churn, scaling their teams, and building products that people and businesses love. In this episode, we'll be chatting with Chirag from Blaze. Blaze uses AI and automation to scan millions of online signals to help modern companies target the right potential customers, especially when they're ready to purchase. We're excited to hear their story and the lessons they've learned along the way. We'll be dissecting the wins, the losses, and everything in between. So, buckle up, grab your headphones, and get ready to dive in the world of SaaS founders. Hey, Chirag, thank you for joining in. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and thank you, Yash, for the really warm introduction. And super excited to be here. So I had a look at some of the prior episodes, and I hope this one lives up to the billing.
Yeah, it would for sure. And so I want to start. I want to start by if you can share something that helps us figure out, where are we today? Like just taking stock. So in terms of, if you could talk a little bit more about what Blaze does, how long ago did you start? Where have you reached today? And what are some short-term goals at Blaze?
Yeah, so I can share a bit about, and I can start with the problem which we saw. And this was, we were actually experimenting with the prior idea, and that's when we noticed this problem. Today, the world of outbound marketing is extremely cluttered. And if you look at it, the problem is that like all of us get potentially anywhere between like multi tens to hundreds of messages every single day, and this is just like
Yeah,
business related messages, and then
yeah,
you have also like people get personal messages and all that sort of stuff. People's attention is extremely fragmented, and it's very hard for someone who is reaching out to a prospective client to kind of break through that entire barrier. And like a lot of the
yeah.
times like the messages will not be read, or in case they're read, then they're not interesting enough for the message to get mind share. And we saw that as a huge problem. The second thing we saw is most people are not spending like people's attention are being diverted away from like traditional business channels such as email and some of the business messaging channels to like people are spending a lot more time on places such as X, LinkedIn, potentially Slack, Discord, Telegram. So user attention is really fragmented. Even in the business context, it's fairly fragmented. So these are the two insights which we had, and we went back to the drawing board to figure out, okay, how can we help our customers reach their target users in a very targeted and direct way, so that they're actually able to get the user to listen to them. And that's when we realized that okay, the way to break through the clutter today is by having like hyper personalized messages for the targeted user at the right time. The reality is every buyer is take for example, almost every company would need SOC 2 compliance, but it's not that they would need SOC 2 compliance at the exact same time. It depends on the stage of the business. So being able to understand where a business is and then being able to reach out to them at the right point of time is extremely critical. So that's kind of the problem statement. What we started doing was started helping our customers aggregate a number of signals about their end users to be able to reach out to them at the right point of time. We started off with Web3 as the industry, and why we found Web3 is really interesting because there's a lot of data on social as well as public transaction data, and we kind of combine that to like be able to understand the end user and reach out to them. But we are slowly seeing that those patterns actually hold for a number of other industries as well, and that's kind of how we have been scaling. That's how we've been scaling outward and kind of going from there. In terms of when we started this company, we started working on this idea around I think it was April 2022. So it's been a bit more than a couple of years. And in terms of where we are, we're working with about hundreds of customers right now, and have run over like thousands of campaigns on our product.
Hey, sir. And you're also part of YC.
Yeah, we went through the Y Combinator Winter 22 batch.
Yeah, I mean that's a really cool thing. So no, but this is awesome. I think so. One of the things that I've always sort of try to understand a little more, if I can probe, is that are you like in the business of improving the salesperson's productivity so that they're able to focus on the right leads, or are you in the business of helping salespeople cast a wider net, which is where they're able to reach out to more, like they get more responses or better conversion rates, right? So which or like is it both of them?
I think the latter, the reality is the latter is the one which wins businesses, right? Today, like
Mhm.
Yash, if you're doing a 2% conversion rate, and if I can help you get that up to 3.5, I'm sure that's something you'll pay me for. And like so I know there are a number of tools around like the productivity angle, but we are focusing on conversion. How can we help our sales and marketing users who are using our product get better responses,
Got it.
and more responses?
And I think and just expanding on one of the things that you said, that the out like there are so many tools and platforms that
Yeah.
help, that claim to help with outbound outreach, and still it is like the outbound outreach that I am done, which other salespeople are doing, is extremely poor quality, right? So
Yeah.
so it'll be like the same copy paste emails that they would have sent to a couple of my other founder friends as well. And so why do you think this is, which is where there are so many number of tools and platforms, at the same time the quality of the outbound outreach that is happening is significantly poor, right? So I want a good, smart salesperson to reach out to me and sell me things because I might find something valuable. But it's just not like the outbound outreach that happens. It's just a turn off, right? At that point of time itself. So why do you think that happens?
I think that's a great question. A lot of the times people look at this as an automation problem rather than a data problem. I think that's kind of what we think. What we have been like as an industry gravitating towards, okay, how can we clear on a complex set of automations, and those automations, especially on some of those tools, you can go pretty crazy
Yeah,
on it. The thing is
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, it's like those flowcharts almost like give me anxiety when I see those. But
yeah,
like, I think
yeah,
we have looked at this. I think that as an industry, we have looked at this as an automation problem. At Blaze, we're trying to reframe this as a data problem, which
Ye-
is sure automation is great, and I think it's of course necessary. But
yeah,
can you reach out to the right user at the right point of time? Even within your business, it could be that if I might have a better chance of selling a product if I reach out to someone else, like who has
yeah,
actually the time, who has the budget, who has who is actually on the lookout for the thing, than thing. And
yeah,
especially after a company goes beyond 50 people, it's not that everyone has the context to everyone, and it's not that the founders would have time to respond to all of those. So being able
yeah,
to find, like, use a database, like data related approach in which you're finding the right person who has the right budget and the right time, using the signals with the company themselves. Most companies are talking a lot about themselves publicly, right? You have your Twitter, you have LinkedIn, you have like different
yeah,
social channels, you have your website. Companies are actually giving you a lot of these signals, right? You can like look up a company and then figure out the tech stack and see what's missing. So all of
yeah,
those technologies are available. And then like what we looked at, okay, hey, can we take a data first approach in which we understand as much as possible about a target company, and then use that information to reach out to do outreach, with of course layering in good automation as and when required.
yeah.
But yeah, first and foremost looking at it as a data product. And I don't think, like, especially with the like advances in AI over the last few years, I think like that's the approach which we think will win in the long term.
Yeah, and this is like really it's a great way to think about it, right? So in outbound or cold outreach, to an extent, automation is a necessary condition, but it's not
Yes,
sufficient, right? So
exactly.
so
Yes,
you need to have intelligence, you need to have data sources that tell you that, and the team BANT like stands for time, right? Is this the right time
exactly.
um to
And you
uh
can even like, I'm
to
just
approach?
and one of the interesting features, and like I'm not trying to plug my product, and I think one of the interesting things which you're also looking at is like looking at patterns as to what is the right time to send a message to a given person, right? Because then it comes to the
Hmm.
top of the inbox at that point of time and things like
Yeah,
that. And then like all of those things also matter, because
yeah,
nobody's looking at them inbox 24/7. Like
yeah,
they have certain parts, or at least most people have certain points of time in the day in which
yeah,
they're let's say looking at their inboxes across social or email and all of that sort of stuff. So even figuring out the
correct.
right time to send to a message to a person is also valuable. So I think figuring out
Yeah.
all of those things, I think, will actually like increase conversion rates to much more than what we have been seeing on the.
Fair point, yeah. That's meaningful for sure. And so the next thing that I want to understand, and I think you also mentioned that there are some amount of tools and technologies that exist. And so one of the challenges that becomes if when we are building a product in a competitive market is that it is only after a customer signs up, uses it for a few weeks or months, is when they realize whether the product is valuable or not.
Yeah.
But to get people to the website and then from website to sign up and then getting their first credit card in, at that point of time, specifically in this industry, the customer doesn't like, they are just at the time that they're putting in their card, they're just hoping that the software will perform. Right? And so
Yeah.
in those cases, what I've seen in my limited experience happen is that the organizations that have more capital, that have the larger microphone, right? So like the larger speaker or
Yeah.
whatever we choose to call it, they tend to attract a lot more than early stage companies with better products. So in given that, and I would qualify this as that industry, that there are tools which may not be great, which may not be the best ones out there, but they have more resources, more capital, a larger mic. How do you think about growing in that as an industry, right? So given that you're early stage, you raise some amount of seed, you're part of YC, and so when your competitors have more resources, how should a founder think about scaling or growing their business?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So the first thing, let me actually talk about the first you made, which was really interesting. It's okay. That the first onboarding flow for a given user is extremely critical. Like first impressions matter a lot. And hence, like what we actually do for about at least like most of our customers is kind of onboard them manually, get them to think, and in fact, like almost try to like run the first campaign for them. And we have seen that leads to extremely high levels of success. Now, once the customer sees a level of success, that they're seeing responses coming, they're seeing the demos being booked, they're seeing like meetings being set up and things like that gives them a level of confidence in which they want to invest further and explore more strategies. But that first impression, like, and I think we will probably try doing that still like this breaks, is like, it's like someone on our team is essentially manually helping the customer out and setting that entire campaign up. From thinking through the creatives to thinking through like exactly like a campaign sequencing, what the automation should be, how to get the data, enrich the data, and all of that sort of stuff. And I think taking out that friction from the end customer has worked really well for us. And I think that's what, and I think we learned this from like, I think the Stripe founders. I think early Stripe founders, what they were doing was like, whenever they were on a sales call or something, like they would essentially like flip the sales call and go ask the customer to go and install Stripe right now. And I think we kind of think about it the same way. And yeah, I think of course there are like number of big players in the space, but I think at the end of the day, customers want their problem solved. They are not looking like, I mean, nobody gets paid for using a tool, right? Like the people get paid for getting meetings. People get paid for
outcomes,
most booked outcomes, and we we try to work as hard as possible to have the best possible first interaction with the product, and like that, if that means us doing anything and everything possible, we'll do that.
Got it. This sort of reminds me of I think Paul Graham's do things that don't scale, right? Especially in the early stages. Which there's a great segue for me there, because that's what I think Airbnb founders also did. And you spent a great deal of time at Airbnb and then followed that with and so having spent like half a decade at Airbnb, a year at Meta, really great companies to work at. Why give that up? Found a company. I mean, sure, doesn't matter whether you're part of IC, what insight you have, how great of a coder you are, or great of a marketer you are. It is a grind. It puts your life in an uncomfortable position for sure. Like, why do that?
Yeah, I think that's I mean, okay, the jobs at Meta and Airbnb are phenomenal. Like, I don't think you can go wrong with that. Personally, for me, it was, I think there are two aspects. One is I definitely saw that data was being underutilized in a lot of like businesses around. And I saw that as an opportunity. And then like, I think of course, like how exactly data can be utilized for different functions, that's something which you defined after we started the startup. But like, even at my, like the way people were thinking about data and machine learning back in like Airbnb and Meta was not how most of the industry was thinking about it. And I think I saw that as an opportunity kind of where I can have an impact. So I think that was the opportunity which I saw. And then I think the second piece is like, I wanted to put myself in a position where like I was uncomfortable and was like learning on a day-to-day basis. And I think nothing that does that more than like building your own startup. And I think like for
Right.
me, like that was the challenge which I was really looking forward to. So I think those are the two catalysts which kind of helped, which essentially like pushed me to like start this. And I think like both of those have held out. And I think like especially the data hypothesis is actually like getting worse, inefficiencies getting worse, because the big companies are actually like phenomenal at using data, and like companies like Meta, Airbnb to an extent, etc., like amazing at, like just not just mining the internal data they have, but like essentially modeling the entire world with the data they can have, right? And so as like so you are, and most small businesses, startups, even like mid-market businesses, like do not have that same luxury or have access to that same level of data or the analysis skills to be able to do interesting things. And it's not just collecting a proprietary internal data set, but the way you get value out of the data set is actually joining with like hundreds of touch points
Yeah.
from like other different sources to like so piece the entire puzzle. So I think that has been, and of course like people are growing to appreciate that, but then there's still like a requirement for like the talent and skill set to like build that sort of
Yeah.
build that out and build that out at scale. And I think I suspect that this hypothesis will play out like in every single like function for the next decade or so. Like I think like if you look at it, like I think probably like 20 years or 30 years back, like learning English was fundamental. And I think then probably like learning at least like basic understanding like software was fundamental. I think like going forward, like understanding data and like how like different data sources, etc., it's not going to just the function of a like data scientist. It's going to be part of everyone, like from HR, marketing, sales, and even like and of course like definitely like technical related professions. And I think that's kind of the world which we are heading towards. And I think that's the opportunity for not just me, but I think lots of entrepreneurs out there.
Interesting that you say that, right? And so the conventional wisdom or assumption is that given that we have AI, we now don't need to learn a lot more. I mean, so there are people who are, I'm not entirely sure as to how this happened, but we've turned AI into a debate, right? Where AI is going to essentially just do everything. And so one of the things that I've also been reading and hearing is that, so I would say that there are folks who would very quickly call demise of an industry or call demise of a company or call demise of anything as soon as there's something new that comes in, and they just find a way to sort of plug that in. But over here, I've never been able to actually come up with a good argument. So like one of the things that I've always been reading and hearing, and I'm sure folks who are watching this have also been exposed to things like this, is that you don't need SaaS in the age of AI. In the age of AI, you'll be able to just like build your own SaaS, and like everybody will be able to write code and build their own softwares. And SaaS will be disrupted, and I'm sure it might be disrupted. It might change the way that it will not continue to function the way that it does today. But it is a little hazy, the future, right? So you don't really know as to what will happen to SaaS. Like, do you have any thoughts on what's the future of SaaS?
I think those are some great like questions, right?
I don't even think
way
that this was a question. I think this is not even a question. This is just like a confused rant, probably, because I'm just getting in a lot of signals around this. So, but whatever you could make out of it, if you can help us.
Well, I think you may have a great point, right? Like AI accelerates like a lot of people to do things. But thing is, think about this way: if AI is accelerating someone who doesn't know how to build software, AI is also accelerating someone who's excellent at software and who was already a 10x engineer, earlier. So, and that's how I see it. Sure, what I think in the gone up is the bar has gone up. The bar has gone up in terms of, okay, so now what a 10x engineer looks like is different. But there are still like, it's at the end of the day, it's a like power law, and there will be some people who are like outliers, and those outliers are also using AI. So if someone who hasn't built software is using AI, the outliers are also using AI to like accelerate themselves and build even more interesting things. The next thing is, even if you look at like GPT has primarily been trained on publicly available data sources, like thing. And I suspect the interesting publicly available data sources probably like 1 to 2% of the total information available. Like there's enormous amount of data within enterprises, within internal
Yeah.
knowledge bases, and all that sort of stuff, which haven't been tapped. And the future data oriented products are the ones which are going to like leverage all of those sort of knowledge bases to actually like add value. And I think that is where most of the alpha is going to come, where like you have these LLMs, but like you're fine tuning those LLMs with your data to actually like create value for your customers or for your own internal purposes. That is what that is where most of the new value will be created, which again comes back to a data problem. Once a lot of these like best practices around like how to fine tune LLMs and all that sort of stuff becomes available, then I think it comes down to, okay, what is the unique data set you have to where you can extract value out of it. And I kind of see that as the second direction where the world is going. And I think the third direction is, I think the future of SaaS is going to be, I think it seems to be like going very outcomes oriented, but now that people have like, as I said, like the bar is going up. Earlier, people were paying for automation. Now, I think people will be, or automation, or be having a system of record. Now, I think people will pay, okay, yeah, sure, all that is good, but like, if my final outcome is to make money, or my final outcome is to hire a candidate, or my final outcome is to close and book a demo, how much of that are you doing? And then I think there might be some interesting business models around that, where like people have, instead of paying for let's say for an SEO agency, so paying for the number of blogs created or the number of page links added, can you pay for what my Google ranking is and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah. Outcome is a service, right?
Exactly, yes. I think that those are probably some of the trends which are going to accelerate over the next 3 to 5 years.
Interesting, yeah. And so this is great, right? So because one of the things that we're as Momentum Ventures also working on is essentially offering a service of fine tuning or verticalizing the LLM on data set. But interesting that you mentioned it as well. So another question that I have for you, which I wanted to understand a little more, is that for a product like Blaze, it touches a couple of different departments in an organization, right? It talks to marketing and sales primarily, but then maybe also from ads to social media to search and like a couple of different things. And so what we've seen traditionally is that pricing models for platforms that typically talk about or typically offer value on ads versus pricing models for things that help with email campaigns are very different. But you are one product, right? And so how have you thought about your pricing where, in some cases it is per seat, in some cases it is per, 1,000 impressions or whatever the case may be, right? Or some cases even outcomes. Like, how do you think about your pricing?
Thank you so much for asking the question. That's actually super helpful. So that's product is actually something which what we realized, especially like when we were doing campaigns on X, LinkedIn, is that if a user actually sees your ad, then they're a lot more likely to respond to your outbound. And I think that was a very interesting insight which we had, is because if you look at the user funnel, awareness, consideration, and conversion, if a user knows nothing about you, has never seen you, etc., like it's very unlikely for them. So ads help in building awareness, like especially what we try to do is build very custom audiences where we're like targeting ads to specific audiences whom we are going to do outbound to later. So it kind of like helps us become top of mind for it helps businesses become top of mind for their end user, and then after that do the outbound, let's say like in a certain time period after that. And that is a thesis which we have played out. So for us, like ads, we use ads as a part of the awareness piece. Like our primarily like business model is like so we have a base plan which is primarily, okay, if you're self-serve, I think that's a great plan for you. If you are on the plus plan, it's primarily like if you have teams and things like that. And then premium, if you're like using some of the like API or complex features, SSO and all of that sort of stuff. Final one is like what the enterprise is, when like, okay, the enterprise wants to needs active help from our data team to actually create audiences, as well as run some of the campaigns, monitor, do data analysis and reporting, and then also help them inform on strategy. So that's kind of how we have baked in. And what we realize again, like we don't really charge for ads as a per unit thing. We rather bake it in as part of the product and focus on helping getting closer to the outcome piece.
So would it be fair to say that the way that your pricing has been designed is, I mean, there could be limits and everything, but the way that the pricing has been designed is like these are built for different personas, right? Early stage, like single founder doing outreach, and then a small company and so on and so forth. Like,
Yeah, I think that could be, I think that's definitely one way of looking at it. I think the other way is like also from a like level of time perspective, because we do have some early stage startups also using the like enterprise plan primarily because they don't have an internal team to execute on like design and execute on campaigns. So that's where like we add a lot of
Got it.
value there. So yeah, it's kind of
Got it.
also like the someone who self-serve is basically someone who knows, understands the strategies, knows exactly what they need to do, and is executing
Yeah.
at a high level. And
Got it.
the pro plan is someone where like you have a team and you need multiple people. The premium plan is someone like who has the time and effort to like build complex workflows using some of the APIs, fetch data, join it with some internal data sources which they do not want to upload to our data systems and stuff like that. And like that, so they have already thought through a bunch about that. And enterprises again, like basically like okay, they want to execute in complex strategies, but probably like do not have any sort of time, etc., to do it, and they need us to like do a lot of the heavy lifting. I would look at it from that perspective.
Got it. Yeah. Interesting. So this brings me to the last part of this conversation. And so one of the things that we do is we ask each founder to ask a question to the guest that we are going to have next time. And so typically this question is something that you in your company or in your journey of building a SaaS company are sort of battling with or trying to understand how to go about it. So while you think about the question that you have, I'll ask you the question that our previous founder, who was Lena from Unschooler, had for you, which was that, and so they have an LMS product, which is an AI-based LMS product. So it helps course creators create content faster using AI, and then the standard LMS that you typically have, right? And so one of the things that they were thinking about is that there are different industries that they could target, right? So an LMS is great for universities, for schools, and even for organizations of a particular scale. Even within those organizations, there are certain sub-industries that will find an LMS more useful than the others. And when you have so many different industries that could use the product, how do you actually decide which are the lower hanging fruits, and how do you figure out that, hey, okay, I'm going to dedicate the next 6 months to 12 months or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
and this much dollars or this much team to just doing GTM for this particular industry, right? So how do you sort of niche down when you have a couple of options?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I mean, again, like I think there might be a lot of interesting answers out here. What we have typically done is that we talk to about like 5 to 10 people per industry, and then see how many of those actually convert into customers. At the end of the day, like there's nothing like money or data which kind of like a thing which helps validate your hypothesis. So what I would do is like, yeah, if we have and I think we did run a few of these experiments in the past as well, and where we were looking like in B2B, it's like 3 subcategories. What we did was within each of the subcategories, we identified like, let's say, okay, how do we like we first said, okay, you need to do a certain amount of experimentation, right? So we were like, okay, we need to get 10 demos booked for each of these vertical industries, and of those 10 demos, how much are we able to convert? And typically that has been a very good prioritization function. It's all been almost never, at least for us, it's never been that it's been equal. We would see that one industry like has a significant larger pull than other for whatever reason, and sometimes we would have an hypothesis out of them. Sometimes it's a reason which would really surprise us, and then we would start focusing on that for the next 6 to 9 months. And I think,
So
and
like
then again,
qualitative.
yeah, actually just like look at let's see what works and kind of do that. And fortunately, by using our own tool, like we have been able to like, so for us, like getting those initial like conversations set up have been fairly like straightforward. So we have been actually like able to do that. So I think
Interesting.
what we try, yeah, I think like just being experimental about it, trying to get data from the market and using that to inform your decision making is probably the best.
And what's your question? And from the quality of this conversation, I'm confident that you'll make it really difficult for the next
No.
founder. So what's your question? What's the thing that you're battling with?
Yeah, I think one of the questions which I have been intrigued about and would love to hear more about is especially in like early stage startups, you need people not just the founders, but you need for all the employees and team members to also be donning multiple hats. But
Yes.
at some point of time, that can stretch into where like that can end up creating inefficiencies. So my question for the next founder would be like, how do they identify when a team member is stretched versus when like they can take up new challenges and kind of
Nice.
and take up new challenges for the company, and then when does it make sense for someone to have a specialization, or versus when does it make sense for someone to like take
For
on
them to be
multiple roles?
generalist. Interesting, yeah. It's a great question. And with that, Chirag, I thank you for joining me on this conversation, and for all the folks who've been listening this, watching this on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you are, you'll be able to find the link to Blaze, which is with Blaze.app in the description. You can go ahead, check it out, make your outbound, your outreach, have better conversion rates with Blaze, right? And thank you
Yeah,
for joining in today, and we'll see you until next time.
awesome. Thank you, Yash. Really appreciate it.